Hello everyone and welcome to today's Tag Inspector training webinar. We'll go through, topic today is real-time real results. We'll go through some of the functionality of the Tag Inspector Realtime module, some of the capabilities there. I want to go through as more and more clients, prospects, really everyone using the real-time module and trying to understand when is it best to use those reports, that reporting, versus what we have been using and are currently seeing in the scans. So I want to go through some of the primary use cases, which aspects of those are going to be best served by utilizing scans, when to use that information, and then when best to use real-time. And I want to highlight a few things with real-time here today. So, as always, the Tag Inspector, more of the platform-specific training, we try to keep it to right around 30 minutes. And please ask any questions as we go along. To start out here, just a little bit of housekeeping. As you all are likely well aware, Tag Inspector is a product of InfoTrust LLC. On the InfoTrust side of the house, we do web analytics, tag management, and product development work. One of those products resulting in Tag Inspector. On an annual basis, over 2,000 sites that are analyzed, audited, worked with, and over 30 digital marketing and training programs a year, including these webinars, which we typically will have more product-centered about once a month. We have offices here at our home base, Cincinnati, USA, as well as Dubai and Barcelona. Your presenter today will be myself. I'm Lucas. I'm our Tag Inspector product manager. And also do some tag management consulting work. So happy to take you through the platform. As I mentioned up front, I want to go through just the differences between Tag Inspector scans as well as Tag Inspector Realtime, give everyone a better understanding of the Realtime module, what it's capable of, some of the use cases, why you would use it, and really the strength of using that reporting and that functionality. I then want to go through specifically three main use cases and compare scans and the reporting there versus real-time and the reporting there. So for performance, what aspects of the scans do you want to leverage in order to be able to audit and then monitor tag performance and its effect on user experience and page performance on the site. Same thing with real-time. Then go through governance and security, how you can play around within each of those two modules in order to be able to address those use cases. And then finally, we'll end up with data collection validation. The primary focus here, as I've mentioned a couple times, will be Tag Inspector Realtime, the reporting there in that module, just that functionality. So I also have some various validation rules and example reports for each of those use cases. At the end, as always, we'll finish up with some questions and a summary. But if you have questions throughout, please don't hesitate, reach out. Within the questions pane there in the GoToWebinar little side tab, whatever it is, you can drop questions in there. Feel free to send them across as we go along. Happy to stop and expand on any of these different points. Cool. So to start, scans versus real-time. What's the difference? So number one, it's going to help to understand exactly how each of these works and what I'm talking about when referring to the two different modules within Tag Inspector. So the Tag Inspector scans, it's a traditional approach to looking at this. It's probably similar to, if you haven't used Tag Inspector, similar to something you've used in the past, or if you have used Tag Inspector, it's what you've come to know and love. So it's a crawler, scan-based approach. Our scanner will go through. It's simulating a user loading each page in basically like a virtual browser so that we can then collect all requests sent by the various different tags. Those run through the database, they get classified, showing exactly what the platform is, how it's loading, where it's loading, pages tags are on, pages missing out of all of those that are scanned. So great for information on any tags loading on initial page load. Great for high-level information as to what tags are loading, as well as some baseline page information. The second module, and where we got the title and the topic today, is our Tag Inspector Realtime functionality. So This works differently. Works differently than probably any other tag auditing or tag monitoring tools you've used in the past. And it's a little bit more robust in many ways, just due to the volume of data that's being collected. So how it works is it's a tag-based solution. So you deploy our Tag Inspector Realtime tag across all pages of a website or a specific section if you're only wanting to look at one area. And what happens is as live users go through and interact with your site, so load different pages, click on buttons, buy things, interact with different aspects on the website, our Tag Inspector Realtime tag will sit there and just record and analyze the tag behavior that's happening. So again, recording all of those requests, recording timing information, page timing information, in order to be able to go back into our reporting and then be able to offer you insights and analysis. So it's live in the live environment or any environment that you have deployed the tag in. It's real data from real users, so it's covering all different scenarios, all different unique characteristics that every single user could have. Browser type, browser version, location, time, the whole nine. Cool. So that's going to help to understand, knowing how each of these is working, at least at a high level, is going to help to understand some of the nuances as we go through these different use cases and when and how to really leverage real-time, when and how to really leverage the scan reports. So at this point, let's get into those. What are these different use cases? What are the different comparisons? So 3 primary ones: performance, that's tag performance, page performance, user experience. How do all those things play together? And how do we optimize and make sure that tags aren't negatively affecting our page performance and as well as our user experience? Second thing we'll touch on is more the governance and security. So when we say governance, we're talking about just the tag management, privacy policies, data sharing agreements, things like that. And then when we talk about security, it's more on the data front. Are there malicious tags or malicious JavaScript loading on the website that might be scraping user information or just doing bad things on there? So looking at the tags and wanting to understand, is there a security threat? Is there a privacy threat? Or is there a governance or legal threat potentially of any of the tags or platforms that are loading? And then finally, we'll get into the data collection validation. So that's making sure, ensuring that all of your different tags are executing, loading as you're expecting them to, as well as collecting all of the proper data points. So let's get started with the performance use case. So when to use each, when to really leverage the scans, when to leverage Tag Inspector Realtime. So scans are great at establishing a baseline. I mean, if you think about it, it's a simulated scan. We're able to, basically it's browsing happening in a vacuum. So you have ideal, consistent conditions at least from the client side. And we can collect information for establishing a baseline, page timing information, page load specific metrics. We'll get into these a little bit more here in a second. For when to use real time, because of how it's working, it's live user data. So we're able to collect, and we do collect, a huge, massive volume of data. Even if you have, you put real time live for say 10 minutes on the website, and you have 100 visitors come throughout the course of that 10 minutes, you now have, if you have 100 visitors hit a particular page over the course of 10 minutes, you have data around the tags that are executing, data points being collected, timing information for all 100 of those things. If you wanted to address something like that with scans, you have to run 100 scans across that page in order to just be able to collect that same volume of information. And you're going to have to configure each of those scans in order to be able to mimic those different conditions, location that a user is coming from, or browser type, browser version, any of those aspects that they're using in order to access that site. So there could be differences in, obviously a user's connection or their bandwidth is going to greatly affect the performance metrics that you're seeing for tags. So we can get a huge, massive, larger volume of data to get to the core truth. It's live user data, so it covers all different scenarios that we might see, and then the behavior under all possible conditions. Again, especially for performance, this is critical because we're able to see on average or what are the median timing information for different tags as well as for the page. And we can see what the standard deviation is and really model things much, much better. Again, just due to the volume and the diversity of the data that we're going to be seeing in real time. So to get into these a little bit more in depth, so what you see here on the right hand side is a page loading graph, basically, or visualization. And this is included in a lot of, if you've worked with our team on the more of the management service side, this is some information that oftentimes we'll pull out in order to be able to help clients understand where tags are loading when it comes to tag performance and what might be affecting user experience. So as I mentioned, being able to establish a baseline so we can see on average at what time do these various different tags start loading, how long is it taking them to fully execute and finish that load. We can then overlay that information with page timing information, so anything that's happening before different page timing events or browser timing events, such as DOM interactive, DOM content load, before DOM complete, after that content loaded. So we can see the things that are loading earlier in the page load, especially things that are before DOM interactive or before DOM content load, those are the things that are competing with the requests for the various different aspects that are making up your page, such as the content, or the request out to your CDN for content, or the request out to your site servers for the images. Things that are being pulled in and then rendered by the browser and pulled together so that the user can view and actually interact with your website. So any of these tags that are loading up before those different timing events are going to be much more critical when it comes to can they affect or are they affecting the performance of my website as users are seeing it. So scans allow us to define this baseline, what are we expecting, and in a vacuum, basically, what would we be expecting to happen across all the different tags as well as across my different page. Now, with real-time, and again going back to the volume and diversity of the data that we're being able to see, because it is live user data and because we have a much larger data set, we're able to get beyond that baseline. This is what I expect under perfect conditions. What is actually happening? Are my numbers way skewed due to users coming from a certain location? My site is performing poorly, or certain tags are performing really, really poorly based upon their server location. So I can get to that information in real time, and what you can see here is a latency figure as well as a standard deviation for that latency figure. So one, we're able to see, are any of these different platforms taking a really long time to load and to fully execute on my site? And number two, we're able to see, is that load behavior, is it consistent? Or is it really all over the map? If things are really all over the map, it means that the load behavior of a particular tag is unpredictable, and it makes it that much more difficult in order to be able to optimize and troubleshoot any different issues. So real time here, super valuable when it comes to being able to identify these different potential issues and when you're going through an audit. But with some new functionality within Tag Inspector on the real-time side, you're also able to put some different limits and alerts around these things. So one of the things that you probably likely saw with the webinar invitation is talking about being able to monitor and validate loading behavior of tags. So as you can see here within the real-time report, we're able to show for all requests that are happening on a particular page load, we're able to see start time, end time of all those different requests. And that's how we're getting those metrics around latency or download time of the tags. So we can see the full time it's going to take to execute. And if I have standards, if I have an expectation of when a particular tag or how long it should take for a tag to fully load, I can then input those into the real-time alerting and validation functionality. So by setting that standard, saying what the latency limit is, the system is automatically going to flag any instance or any page load in which a hit to that particular platform is taking longer than 250 milliseconds to load. I use 250 milliseconds in this example because it's a common number that a lot of people are, at least that I've been speaking with, are really shooting for as far as what they expect from a performance baseline of the vendors that they're working with. Now, this is also useful, especially coming in here to the holiday time period where a lot of sites see massive traffic spikes just due to a lot more traffic and a lot more people shopping and accessing the site. One fear that I constantly hear from different clients, different prospects, just general people in the industry is what happens if something on the website goes wrong and it stops users from being able to, actually complete the desired or convert on my website. One potential thing that could go wrong is if some tag errors out just because there's so much traffic and so much load going on when making those requests and hitting their servers that something goes down, which then negatively causes errors on your website or maybe causes everything else to time out on your page. A common use case for this functionality here with the alerting is using it in order to be able to identify that. I mean, if one of your tag vendors' servers go down, the latency numbers are going to fly up because tags aren't going to, or the requests are never going to complete. So by setting these limits, we can be alerted again in real time. Alerts in real time can be configured within 20 minutes of that data being collected and being checked. So near real time, you can be aware that some issue has popped up on the website related to tags, the performance, and the actions of the various different tags on the website. Second use case I want to cover here is around the governance and security. As I mentioned, this would cover things like your privacy policy, our tags following it, our different sensitive data points being collected, and is anything in violation of the standards that you have set out. So when to use each. So with scans, super helpful for an initial inventory and that upfront audit, just to be able to make sure, hey, what unauthorized tags are on my site now? If I'm comfortable with everything, all these things are allowed. How tags are loading, so you can see if there's any piggybacking going on, and that would be one tag loading through or piggybacking off of another tag. So we can see if there is an unauthorized tag, how is it actually being introduced to my website. We can also see a little bit deeper within iframes with scans. Obviously a limitation of just any tag that's on the website, you're limited to how dig you can deep within some of the different iframes on that site. With the scans, we can dig a little bit deeper. Now, with real time, the value here is around checking specific data points. Again, thinking back to the volume and the diversity of the data that is able to be collected here. So we can look at, using the validation rules, things that are really granular, such as the structure of a data point being collected within requests. You have those real-time alerts and notifications, as well as able to pick up any tags that are loading conditionally. So scans, here's an example of what I was talking about on how tags load, is our hierarchy visualization. So this shows how all the different platforms that are loading on your site are actually getting there. Anything that's loading from the page source is going to be in that first level on the left. Anything that's loading through or piggybacking off of another tag is going to be contained and visualized within those subsequent levels, moving left to right. So I can see here something like Media Math that's loading through Signal. That's loading in about 10, 12 additional platforms. Me as a site owner, I might not even be aware that these things are being introduced onto my site. able to cookie our users, able to collect information on our users. And again, especially coming up into the holiday season where you're investing a lot in order to be able to attract users to the website. You don't want these unauthorized or even platforms that you're unaware of potentially gaining that information and being able to sell it to competitors, making it even more expensive and more difficult for you to drive that traffic and generate those conversions. Now within Realtime, and I have this screenshot here because I find it extremely interesting. So this is a site where about 64,000 total page loads that have happened across all pages of this particular website over the past day or so. You can see here that certain tags we've identified as loading 1, 2, 3 times out of 63,000. Now these are things that are loading 0.1% of the time, 0.01% of the time, but are still being able to be picked up by the tag inspector, the real-time reporting. And again, that goes back to because it is a tag, and it's for a security use case, it can be always on. So for all users and all page loads, we're able to identify, what are those different tags, what are those platforms that are loading. Oftentimes, when we have these sorts of examples where it's just loading 1, 2, 3 times, it might be a browser plugin that's injecting it on a page. We see it sometimes with affiliate programs. People might inject via a browser plugin a tag for an affiliate program trying to steal conversions. That's just one example, but wanted to highlight this so you can see the robustness here of what's possible. Now the last real benefit of Realtime for this particular use case is around the Realtime Alerts and the notifications. And I liken it to when you go out of town, for example on vacation, running a scan would be similar to asking your neighbor to, hey, can you maybe take a look around, make sure no windows are broken, no doors open, or anything like that once a day. Pretty comprehensive, yes. You're always going to have the ability to be notified of that, but that's not going to stop a robber from breaking that window and actually coming into the house. When you come to the real-time alerts and notifications, that would be akin to having a security system, an alarm system on the house. That one is going to, it's going to alert you immediately as soon as that window breaks. So you're able to be much more proactive in stopping and fixing and scaring away anyone that might be trying to do something malicious or insecure on your website. Now, a common example of something of that malicious activity is different platforms maybe configuring it in order to collect PII information. Now, I use an example here with Google Analytics and an email because it's a common use case that our clients will apply. So for a lot of these different platforms, and it might be also within your privacy policy, that you're not allowed to collect personally identifiable information, such as an email address. In the case of Google Analytics, just because it's a common analytics platform, is why we see it more often. But in the case of GA, if you have email addresses sitting within your property, your account, you are in violation of their privacy policy. And as such, your data it's possible that they could delete the data from your particular account. So to be able to ward against that, you might set up a validation rule here around a tag request, making sure that no request is ever being sent to Google Analytics with the HTTP request matching a regex that's written in order to be able to collect and identify an email address being included in there. The final use case here is around data collection validation, and this would be testing, making sure that data points and tags are always behaving as you are expecting them to. So when to use scans, again, great for high-level information, coverage, duplicate tracking, ensure that everything is loading in the proper way. Really, scans are good for upfront configuration, just making sure that configuration is set up how you want it to be. But then when you introduce real-time and the tag on the website, again, in that live environment, you're able to see a few different benefits and a few different reasons for using it, or use cases. Volume of validations, any sort of discrepancy, for example, between your backend source of truth or your e-commerce platform and your analytics platform that you're using for the website, all those different sorts of issues are a matter of degree. If something's not being collected 100% of the time, aka your configuration is way off, that's easy to spot. It's easy to test for. The things that are difficult is when your backend system and your analytics platform have a 15% discrepancy, 20% discrepancy. Now, we always expect a small discrepancy just because at the end of the day with your web analytics platform you are dealing with JavaScript. But we should see that at the very least within 10%, the goal being within 5%. In order to be able to really dig down and diagnose why these issues or under what conditions these issues are happening, and really even what the issue is it a data layer problem, is it a tag problem, is it a code problem, configuration problem, we have to know and have a larger data set, larger volume, and we have to have data collected across all the different scenarios that we could be facing. And that's the benefit that real-time gives you. You don't have to create a bunch of simulations. You don't have to run a bunch of scans. Set the tag live, collect the information, and be able to really dig into the results and fix whatever it is that's ailing your website and your data collection apparatus. Last thing here is the next part is any conditional tag behavior. Again, things could be loading only for certain users with containing a particular cookie, or coming from a particular source, or located in a certain country. Real-time, again, is able to collect information across all of those different scenarios in order to help you diagnose any sorts of issues and give you the confidence that you are collecting a complete and accurate data set across all conditions. And then the final piece here with critical actions in the real-time alerting. And the example that I use is around transaction information. So with real-time, because it is alerting you in real time, again, within 20 minutes, oftentimes, and it might not be the case with your analytics platform, but a lot of times like media campaigns, media tagging, you might set it up and you might run reports every few days or once a week. Or in the case of some media platforms, you might just run it at the end of a campaign. How did this do? And then we can compare it to other campaigns that we're running, and then we can make decisions from there. Well, if something goes wrong in the middle of that, I mean, a lot of people, in my experience, everyone tests up front. They would test the configuration. Again, that's easy, that's quick, and then we publish it to production, and it's there, it's live. If a problem arises, something comes up, that tag stops collecting information, no one knows until they go back to review the data. At that point, the data's crappy, and there's nothing you can do with it. So with the real-time and these validation rules, what this allows you to do is define what the expected action is, or what the expected behavior is of that tag, data points that should be collected. This system will automatically check that, and then alert as to any different types of issues. Now the example here again is around Google Analytics, just looking for the parameter for a transaction ID, as well as a parameter for a transaction revenue, and running that validation on the order confirmation page. Again, set this, apply it. It's going to go ahead and test that for all users as they're going through there, as well as, because it's all users, all scenarios and combinations that might be happening. So that brings us pretty much right up to the full 30 minutes. Again, my goal here today was to be able to take you all through just the different modules in Tag Inspector, but getting a ton of questions of late, as to when should I use this report, when should I use that report. Wanted to be able to provide some clarity there. I hope it was really helpful. Again, just a quick summary. 2 different modules within Tag Inspector. You have your Tag Inspector Scans, Tag Inspector Realtime. Scans, simulated scans, simulating a user going through. Awesome for collecting information around like hierarchy, how tags are loading, high-level tag information. What's there, where are they, that sort of thing. Realtime, a little bit more comprehensive in that it's collecting information across all users in whatever environment that you're in. You're able to get a little bit more granular with the data points that are being collected, as well as have that real-time validation and alerting available. Within both, you're going to see metrics for things like tag timing information, page timing information, just general tag behavior that adds additional context to what you're seeing and what it is that you might just be initially looking for when it comes to tag behavior to be able to help you diagnose any sorts of issues. At this point, I'll turn it over. Looks like we have a couple of questions, so I'll run through these. First one, from that data collection validation section, I know I used the example of a rule around Google Analytics. This question's around if we're able to, leveraging real-time, test the data layer. Which absolutely, yes, you can. If you check out the Tag Inspector blog, there's a quick little video tutorial around testing and validating the data layer and how you can set up those different rules. Basically, you point a validation rule to an object on the page and then look for that object containing or matching some sort of a regex in order to be able to validate that, yes, this event was pushed, or yes, this particular value or variable is being contained within that object. Another question around performance, asking about, and actually +1 for referencing that they had watched the past webinar. So a couple months back, we had ran a webinar around tags and performance. One of the main ideas there was that tag latency was not the top metric that you should really be looking at and analyzing when it comes to page performance and user experience, but rather some of those other metrics such as request volume, request size, total result of that tag being on the website, which is 100% accurate. All those additional metrics are collected and are contained within the real-time as well as the scan reporting. So those things are available to you if you're going through an audit. The only thing right now that you can validate based upon is those latency figures. And it goes back to the use case that I had highlighted. We want to know from a latency standpoint, is anything failing? Or are any of these different platforms really struggling under the load that's happening at that point? When it comes to latency, or when it comes to a tag or a platform failing, latency is the best thing to look at. And that's one thing that can really severely hurt your website, especially in much more high traffic times. Because it's not just high traffic for you and your site, it's also high traffic for these vendors and the servers that they're working with. So that's really the value there. Creating those validation rules, those real-time alerts around those things, so you can know as soon as something fails. Nope. It looks like that is it. As always, if any other questions come up, please let me know. Just shoot over an email to us, either via a contact us form on the website, or you can reach out to myself directly. Or anyone on the team. Let us know if there's any questions, anything we can help with. As always, thank you all for joining our Tag Inspector training webinar series today around real-time, when to leverage those reports. And we hope to see you on future webinars in the future. Talk soon.